Okay, here we are doing basic 3D Studio setup, taking a linked AutoCAD 3D model and making it a pretty rendering. So what I have is I'm in my template file. I'm actually going to go ahead and save this template file as a job-specific file. I have my SolidWorks panel open over here. I have it minimized. I'm going to go ahead and reference in by saying Manage Links. Steer to my file. I'm going to reference in the 3D I'm using. And say I'm going to use my presets, drawing saved from AutoCAD. And I'll go ahead and give you a shot of what that looks like. Again, you want to make sure you're doing the same thing. You want zero surface deviation. You don't want to include any of these things from AutoCAD. Everything else is mostly default. Again, I turn off this helper, go down, make your settings look like that, and then splines, I don't render them, so we're good. I'm just going to cancel out of there, go back to here, and actually see your files here. We have not attached it yet, so I have to hit attach this file. And it looks like we're good. There's our 3D model. So I'm going to go ahead and close this for now. The first thing I like to do is give this model a material. There is absolutely no material right now, so everything is pitch black. Again, F4 turns on and off the vertices on the 3D model. So I'm going to turn those off for now. So I'm going to go ahead and open my material editor, and I'm going to use my eyedropper tool to pick this black material. And it's going to bring up this global Autodesk material, which right now has absolutely no color. So we're going to change it to use color and slide it down to a gray. Again, this button lays everything out vertically, and I like to minimize my unused nodes, and I can close this for now. Now we can see our house is in here as a gray color instead. I happen to make this file, this template file, from here, so my camera is already pretty well lined up. But just to show you, the first thing I would do is go in here and adjust my camera view to the way I wanted it. Go in here and pan a little bit, and I'll say that's good for now. I'm going to open my SolidWorks and just do a little test render here, just to see if we're in the right ballpark. Looks pretty good to me at the moment. The only other thing we're going to do here is go ahead and adjust the sun to be real from the correct direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my compass rose here and rotate them. I happen to know this house faces just a little bit more westerly, just a little bit south. So I think we're rotating it 15 degrees. I'm going to note that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this camera viewport. I'm going to type C, and I'm going to go to my sun camera. This is the camera at the compass rose here that looks at the sun direction. So I want to look there because I have an HDRI sky going into the dome light, which I want to line up with my actual sun direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit 8, which brings up my environment panel, and you're seeing this map 1 is my environment. So I'm going to open my material palette again, and if I pull this in here and say instance, it's going to bring me to this material. This is what's going into the environment. However, this is an output map of an HDRI image, but because this is going into the environment, the output map sort of voids it, so you cannot see it in the viewport. So what I'm going to do temporarily is drag in the original HDRI into the environment as an instance. Now it's going to take a minute before I can do anything because it's bringing in a 300 meg file into your max file, and it takes a minute to compute. So what I'm going to do here is close the materials for a minute, Now as I see this, the sun is very, very close to where it should be per the drawing. What I want to do is go ahead and try to line them up. One thing I can do is go into this HDRI, and again, temporarily, I can turn down the overall multiplier, which should help me see the sun a little better. And again, there's a big lag anytime you do anything with an HDRI. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I'm going to look at the sun. So I remember that these were probably close to being lined up, that I rotated my compass rose 15 degrees. So I'm going to give it a shot and say 15 plus 55 is 70. Again, it's going to lag for a second. This was a new feature added a couple versions ago, the lag time. Didn't used to do that. Now this moved it to the right, so positive moved it to the right. I think I want to move it back. Instead of 70 degrees, we'll take away 30 degrees and say 40 degrees. It's kind of a hit and miss game, depending on where the sun's located within the HDRI you're using. Okay, it looks like they're lined up, but my sun is much too high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Q for select and hit my sun. I'm going to go to the Modify panel. I'm going to go to the setup here, and you can see we're what's that, September. What if I change it to 1 month later? I'm going to go back and adjust the days just to bring that sun angle down to line it up with my HDRI. And for now, that's as close as you'll ever need to be. I just want to make sure the sunlight rays from my HDR tend to line up with my sunlight system. So now I'm going to go look at my camera view for my house. Again, if I do a test render, the background's going to be really dark because we did not put that output modifier back. So I'm going to go ahead and open my materials, and we're going to go ahead and drag the output. The one thing I want to remember to change as well is this overall multiplier. I down that so I can see it. So I'm going to turn that back to 1. And then drag my, once it finishes lagging, drag that output back into the environment. Now, I can still see my original HDRI map. That'll do that for the rest of this session, but if I close the drawing and open it, it'll go back to black. So I'm going to do a quick preview to make sure my lighting is correct. And it is. So I think the next thing I need to do is, that we can fit into this video, is to make the basic landscape, the basic terrain. So I'm going to go into my working viewport and close my environment for now. I don't need that. I can compact my UI on the solid rocks. I'm going to right click in my viewport. Alt W maximizes it. I'm going to pull back a little. So this topography are 2D P-lines in AutoCAD set at different elevations. As I orbit around, you can kind of see they slope the way the land is going to slope in this project. So what I'm going to do is take that topography, which is linked geometry in AutoCAD, which means I can't do a whole lot with it. So I'm going to select it and do a Control B and clone to a copy. Now this object is an editable spline, which is like it was drawn in 3D Studio. So there I'm going to take that object, go to my Create panel, go down to Compound Objects, and say Terrain. I'm going to hit F4 to kind of see my vertices, and you can see what that thing is doing. I've got polylines defining all my grades, so it actually graded it out pretty good. You know, from the steps up to the garage. There's a little slope in the driveway maybe. So yeah, so I think I'm going to give that a blue material, just because that bothers me. And then, again, before we click anything else, we really want to get out of this Create Compound Object command. So I'm going to go into my Modify panel, and you can see this is a terrain object. There's a few options in there. I tend to not change any of them. Maybe simplification. Sometimes you want to actually use more points and get more vertices, but I'm going to say no for now. In fact, I'm going to change this terrain object to a mesh. Another thing I might do is go in here and do a quadrify modifier, which sort of evens out your surface areas. And then I'm going to go ahead and collapse that. So again, that takes the modifier away and incorporates it into the mesh. And so yeah, so now I've got some basic land shape. I've got the sun in there. We're going to do a quick preview. Let's stop this preview and do a quarter-sized preview. Again, this would be my finished resolution for the client, and a quarter size is nice to just get it done quick. Again, with my render settings on my test renders, I've got my AO on, which gives you some definition when you're just looking at the gray rendering. I'm not saving it right now. I'm using the default method here, which is, I don't know what that is, but do that. Medium quality, I never go above this. In fact, I'll move back down to low for test renders, but medium seems to do everything I want it to do. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, and in the next video we'll probably go ahead and make the land features, the driveway, the sidewalk, and then start to put materials on things.